A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay, and welcome for the first time ever in the history of the show to Ierlandskloof. And I can't tell you exactly where Ierlandskloof is, but if you draw a line roughly between Greyton and Villiersdorp, then I'm sitting in a valley somewhere, which is why there might be the occasional crackle to some of today's signal, but that could also just be a slightly emotional host, as a show that is very personal, very special to me, to my family, plays out today. And I'm going to be very brief about it because there have been quite a few tears since the weekend. But on Saturday, we very sadly said goodbye to Stavros, the bull mastiff who had been the guardian of the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar for 80 years. It was a very quick goodbye, a cancer diagnosis Tuesday, and off to sleep very peacefully on Saturday. There's big Stavros for you. 70 kilograms of complete devotion and complete love, bounded up, would knock you over whenever he could with a big hug. A very special part of our family. And so I thought, because he liked to come and sit in the cellar when I was hosting the show from there, or just come in while I was doing a tasting and catch up with whoever I was sharing a glass of wine with, it would be an appropriate way to raise a glass of wine to him, and also to do so in the company of some fellow dog lovers, people who have got rather special dogs, had very special dogs, or have dogs who are celebrated by their wineries. And we have exactly that today. And so just a little later on in the show, Beyers Truter will be reminiscing fondly about Diesel, a dog celebrated in one of Beyerskloof great wines. Erika Obermeyer raises a glass to Rocky. In fact, she's making a wine for him, and that's important for today's story. We'll also chat to Paul and Nicky Wallace, good friends of mine in Elgin. Their Black Dog Malbec isn't just a cool name, it's a couple of dogs that celebrates. And then there is the Faithful Hound out of Mulderbosch. What is the story behind the Faithful Hound? Well, Henry Kotze will give it to us very, very shortly. But before we go into our celebration of dogs and wine, let's catch up very quickly on some latest wine news. The good news for the competition industry, Prescient's back on board with Wine Mag this year with a number of their reports and awards. And the first of those are open, the Cape White Blend Report for 2022. So if you want to get involved with that, if you've got a splash of Shannon in your wine, or you've just got straight Shannon, because the Shannon Report 2022 is also open for entry. So if that's one you think you might like to get into, so those are two. And there is also the Shiraz Report, which is up and running. So all of those, if you're winemakers, you're busy watching, you'd like to enter, those close the 20th of April, Wednesday the 20th of April. So just under a month to prepare your wine. Head over to Wine Mag and find out how to get on board. And Christian Eads and his respective teams for those three will be judging away. If you're up for something on Saturday, there's a party at the Pigsty, and gee, do they know how to throw a party. Dave Wibberley and mates, it's at the old timber yard, and your chance, if you're down in the Cape, to join wines from the Wine Thief, Kailich's Finest Wines, and Spider Pig themselves. There'll be music. Richard Bossman will be whipping up the food he does so well, charcuterie and more. Not many tickets available, but if you would like them, head over to Quicket, and there'll be a bit more information there for you. Kailich's Finest Wines, the Wine Thief, and Spider Pig. That is this Saturday. And there's also some news, just to tell you, brand new, the latest vintage of the Luddite Shiraz. I caught up a little earlier on today with Niels Verberg at Luddite. Normally they got 16 to 18,000 bottles. They are down to just 6,000 odd based on 2018, the new release being a drought year. It's generally quite difficult to get hold of Luddite Shiraz. It's now going to be next to impossible. So if you know someone who knows someone who knows someone, grab hold of one of South Africa's iconic Shirazes while it lasts, which won't be long. Right, let's move on to this evening's show. And what I loved about this, I sent out a message to a few people. Every single one of them came back so quickly with a big smile in their WhatsApp or text message. Of course, Dan, we'd love to be on the show. We'd love to celebrate our dogs, and we'd love to celebrate how they fit in to the wine history of our respective estates. So let's meet our guests, and we know them all from previous episodes of Dan Really Likes Wine. It's Henry Kotze from Mulderbosch. It's Erika Obermeyer from Erika Obermeyer. It's Paul Wallace and his boss, Nicky, out at Nicky Wallace Wines, trading as Paul Wallace Wines. And it is one of the greats of modern wine, Beyers Truter, who we had on Regional Pinotage. Guys, welcome to all of you, and lovely to have you on. I hope, like me, you've got some tissues handy, because there might be a tear or two as we remember some very special friends to all of us. And the first person I thought of, Beyers, when it came to bringing wine and dogs together was you, because we've spoken about this before. The Diesel is not just a great wine, but for you, it's a great tribute and a great memory. We'll talk about the wine a little later. First of all, tell me about Diesel and why Diesel was such a special part of your life, Beyers.
Dan, I had a lot of wine, I want to say, but I had a lot of dogs in my life. So at my age, I had about 7, 8, or 9. I can't remember all their names, but they all were fantastic. But Diesel was very, very special. He was a 95 kilogram Boer Bull Great Dane, and absolutely wherever he walked, if we sat somewhere and he came into the room, it all of a sudden went quiet, because he was somewhere between a small pony and a dog, and you would see his eyes. He had eyes like a lion. It was yellow eyes, and he only had a small spot of white in front of his and voor sy bors, and he was pitch black, and he had a magnificent attitude. He weren't a racist. He was black, but he enjoyed all the companies, and he chose to decide with whom he'll go with. And some guys he licked, some guys he nipped, some guys he bite, but it could be any color, any person. He either loved you or he just didn't like you that much. But he was a magnificent, magnificent thing. And the day that he died, I cried for 2 weeks, ongoing. He lived for 12 years, 11 years and 11 months. And for a dog that long, you have to love him and he have to love you. So he was always by my side, and it took me a long, long time to get over Diesel. And when he died, I said after 2 weeks, we're going to make a wine called Diesel. And the story can go on. The other guys must probably want to tell about their dogs also. And then we can talk about the wine part of it.
We will do. Just a sense though, Beyers, you talk about him being by your side. Was Diesel a dog who'd charge out into the vineyards with you while you were going through a particular block? He'd be there as well, examining the wine and being your chief lieutenant.
Yeah, all my dogs up to now. I've got a new one, a Maximum. He's a Afrikaner dog. I got him from some people that picked him up along the line, and he's 8 months now. He came to me when he was 7. He also eats grapes. When we walk through the vineyards now, his biggest loss is that there's no grapes on the vineyards, because I only feed him pills to get him. Diesel ate anything, because if Diesel decided he wanted to eat anything, he will eat it. But no, Dan, you asked me something I forgot. I spoke over it now, but all my dogs, Diesel loved grape dogs. When they stop eating, they eat and they eat before harvest time, and then at a certain stage, they get to a stage where they eat and then they start spitting out to check the color and the flavor. Then I know exactly I must go into the cellar to harvest. So I told the story in America once, and the guys asked me if they can buy some of those dogs to use in their vineyards also. So Diesel was a real wine dog also.
What a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful teammate to have in the vineyards. A dog trained in the art of grape appreciation. You talk about him being in the vineyards. I've seen photos of one of our other dogs celebrated this evening. In fact, it might be two dogs because Paul, Nicky, a lot of the photos, a lot of the pictures you sent to me, there was Paul stomping out through the vineyards, and that shadow by the side, like Beyers. You seem to breed dogs who've got a real love of the vineyards.
Okay, well, I'll kick off here. Prior to buying our vineyard in Elgin, we saw in Cape Town advertised
puppies.
And Nicky thought, well, that's a good idea. Moving to the farm, let's go have a look at these puppies. Well, she came home with two puppies, and they were Rottweiler cross Golden Labradors. And my goodness, what beautiful dogs. So it was a sister and a brother, and we came to the farm, and unfortunately we had to give the sister away because they started hunting in a pack. But Jake, who was the dog that we kept, as Dan has mentioned, he was my shadow. And for 15 years, he walked behind me on this rough terrain that we have, and it's very steep and it's very clippy. But there he was, and he irrigated every vine on this farm, and we loved him. And he had the rotty head, the rotty bark, and the Labrador nature. And because we fell in love with Jake, we now also have two more black dogs. These are black Labradors, and the one, her name is Becky, as in Malbec, and the other one is Angus. And it seems like Angus is my new shadow. But taking a little bit further, why we called black dog Malbec was we were one of the first to bring out a Malbec in 2004 from Paul grapes, and in 2008 from our own grapes. And that's why we called our Malbec Black Dog.
Yeah, they both also do the diesel trick of tasting the grapes. Angus is a bit more energetic, and so he's kept his lithe figure. But Becky, I'm afraid, after each vintage, she just gets fatter and fatter because she's on this pure sugar diet, and she never seems to lose the weight. So the black and white Potchefstroom cooks, they also have a go at the grapes, and that drives Paul absolutely insane. But anyway, what can one do? Pure applause.
Clearly part of the family as dogs become, and in the case of my Stavros, the bull mastiff, he thought he wasn't just part of the family, he knew he was a person. He used to sit on the couch with me and try and sneak onto my lap unnoticed, which is a little difficult when you're a 70-kilogram bull mastiff, and there's a very good example of him doing exactly that. Talk to me, because I just love these stories about dogs in the vineyards, Paul, Nicky, about some of those idiosyncrasies of the original black dog, and what made him just so special.
Yeah, he was a legend. He did have that presence that you could not ignore him when he was around. He was incredibly gentle and loved children. People see a big black dog and they automatically get quite nervous of them, especially if you're walking on the beach and these people have got these little stukaki dogs that they pick up and hold, and all Jake and Angus wanted to do is go and sniff them, and they see this monstrous black dog. I mean, he wasn't the size of your dog, but he was a good, I think, about 55 kilos. But he wouldn't have hurt a fly. I don't know if, put to the test, I wouldn't like to have seen him defend us, given the circumstances, but fortunately that never happened. And yeah, he was always just here in the tasting room, go up to the cars, welcome the guests, pedal on their wheels, leave his mark. And we really miss him. 14 years, he was just more than 14 years, good age for a big dog. So we'll see how the two successors go. The current Angus also has a lot of character, and he can often be found sitting on the tasting room table. He just surveys the whole farm as though it's his kingdom. So who are we to say no?
Yeah,
We've lost Dan.
There we go. The hustle and bustle of the race village just behind me as we come to you live from the Absa Cape Epic, talking about dogs in wine. Beyers had Diesel, the famous black dogs. There's a new generation of them out at Paul Wallace. There is also a dog who speaks to a story from the saddest movie I have ever watched. And if you have not watched it, do not watch it. Beyers cried for 2 weeks. This might take you months to get over. It's a movie called Hachi with Richard Gere about a dog whose owner, Richard De Gere, passes away, and the dog waits for him every single day. And that, Henry Kotze at Mulderbosch, is pretty much the story of the Faithful Hound.
Yeah, isn't it? It's a pretty sad story, like you mentioned, but also I think one that's quite uplifting, and there's a lot of loyalty there, devotion, determination from the dog, that never say die attitude, just being under the tree, waiting for his master to come back. This dog was also, like Nicky mentioned, he was a legend in his community, because the farm workers at Mulderbosch, the farm was actually called Faithful or a little dirty farm way back when, and these farm workers, they saw this dog every single day waiting for his boss under the tree, and it was just he became a living little four-legged legend, and such a loving dog, an open, giving dog. Wasn't scared of people. Would always have somebody else coming to sit and just give him a pet, give him a bit of love. And then later on, the first winemaker of Mulderbosch, Mike Dobrovich, he started just giving him some food under the tree every single day, just trying to get closer and closer. So there was a sort of a happy-ish ending where he became part of the cellar family, but he would always, at the same time of day, towards sunset, would go to the tree, just look out over the horizon and just wait for one day. He doesn't know, maybe his first love, his first owner would come walking back over the mountains. So, yeah, sad, but also inspiring.
And a dog who was not only big enough of a story to get a newspaper article based on what he'd done, but a dog who also inspired a wine. We'll talk more about the exact wine and what the Faithful Hound is just a little bit later. But the impact of this dog, not just a newspaper then, but to this day, we're still seeing the Faithful Hound being produced in celebration of this fabulous dog.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's he's really sparked a sort of a revolution at Mulderbosch, and what a great emblem to have is this image of this beautiful dog just living out his life and just doing what he can to make his life meaningful again. The Faithful Hound has always been one of our standouts, and just to be able to connect it to the character of the Faithful Hound, as we call it, his name was actually Bus with a B, a Bravo B, a very important B, and he was, like I said, very loving, and he inspired this amazing wine, which is, as the name suggests, very faithful in all its meaning. Every year you can expect the same type of character out of this one, and always will just never be disappointed in it.
It's a wonderful backstory. There's so many great backstories to different wines in South Africa, but this is a particularly moving one. It's the third of our tales of dogs in the winelands as the evening gets a little busier here in the race village at the Absa Cape Epic. And then there is our fourth dog, along with number 5, who is, of course, Stavros from the Dan Really Likes Wine Cellar. Dog number 4 would be a dog called Rocky, Erika Obermeyer. And we had a long chat about him, and we'll show that chat in just a moment. But Rocky, as with the Black Dogs, as with Diesel, as with the Faithful Hound, this wasn't just a dog. This was a best friend, wasn't it?
Most certainly, Dan. There was not a single day that went by without us having just a huge celebration. She was larger than life itself. I got Rocky as a nearly 7-month-old pup. I met the wonderful people, Trudy and Bob Winter, that breed German pointers, and they really produce top dog of the year probably every year now in South Africa. And Rocky was just my best friend. She was incredible in the vineyards, could sniff out birds from 100 meters on. So it was quite tough to handle her and tasting grapes. She loved grapes, but I think her most loved moments was spent with me in the cellar. Obviously, we had to wait for the cellar to get to a point where activities in the cellar was quite minimum, so we could close all the doors. Otherwise, she would just venture out and hunt and go and venture on the farm and look for birds. So she had a very, very kind of like her trait was to go into the barrel room and to sniff through the barrels and then steal the bungs from the full barrel. So after a visit from Rocky in the cellar, we always had to inspect. But yeah, just a larger than life personality, my best friend. I was lucky to have her for nearly 14 years. And she was really part of every single wine I produced. I got her when I just started at Grainbeck. And yeah, just before she sadly left us in 2020, I bottled my 7th vintage under the Erika Obermeyer wine label. And I remember it was literally days after my last bottling. Just a personality that when she walked into a room, she had attitude. She was very determined, very stubborn at times, but a hard worker. And she really, really understood balance in life. When she played hard. But when she wanted to sleep and snuggle and just rest, you couldn't find for a better cuddle partner. So yeah, she was just absolutely amazing.
Some of this is news I already know because I spent a wonderful couple of hours with Erika a little earlier on in the week in her brand new home in Stellenbosch, the home of Erika Obermeyer wines. We'll be showing some of that on Dan Really Likes Wine, the magazine show, a little later on in the year. But what we did do while we were there, as well as talking about her new home and some of her wines, we had a conversation for a very important reason about Rocky and some wine being made for Rocky. So this is the conversation, and this is why that conversation is so important to me and to Stavros. So it's been a bit of a sad time for the Nickel family, for the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar, as I said goodbye to Stavros, my bull master and my dear companion. How to remember, just an absolutely amazing dog, 70 kilograms of bounding unconditional love. Well, if you're the Nichols and we rather like our wine, you make a wine in tribute. Who do you make it with? Somebody who's been down the same road before. Erika Obermeyer, I've got here, I can see a couple of barrels of a wine called Rocky. Tell me about Rocky.
She was the most incredible, I wouldn't say dog, she was human, angel in my life. I met Rocky in 2006. I just got the job at Grainbeck when Charles left for the Grenel, and the year after I got cellar master position. And she's been with me since my very first vintage. Always there as my mascot and my biggest cheerleader. And I think what I learned from Rocky is the values in life that you should never give up. She was this stubborn, hard-working German pointer that didn't stop for anything. She would hunt and find birds and produce birds. She had the best nose to go and find the birds. And I remember the breeder always said to me, other dogs will run in this field and they'll miss the birds, but Rocky always produced birds. So I think we had a very similar personality of always giving more, going to give that extra bit. So it was really, really sad to say goodbye to her in 2019 when she passed on the 9th of November. And I always, no, that was 2020, the year of COVID. So I always said that lockdown time was when she started to become sick, and that was probably the best time that I got as a bonus to spend with her. But it was really tough to say goodbye, and I just knew that the only way to to keep her legacy going was to make all of what she stands for. And she's still around me, I think, every single day. I talk to her every morning and I say goodbye every night. And some days I forgot to say goodnight. And then the next morning I'll say twice a hello. But yeah, she's always there on very specific days when I bottle and when I crush good grapes. So I knew that I had to do something to keep her legacy alive. And I went out and I said to myself, what wine can you now produce? And I'm very, very chuffed of the wine in barrel. It still needs probably another year in barrel, but yeah, I don't know what we're going to call it yet. There'll be
Rocky sounds like
a very special. I was thinking like something borrowed. You know, we think, why do they only have like 14 years if we're lucky? You had less time with them, and I think because they live in the moment, they live every day to the fullest. They never hold grudges, they forgive easily, and they just love. So I used, it's a Cabernet-based blend, and it just, to me, shows her depth of personality, her tenacity, her drive to just always produce better, and just to get up. And she was never lazy. I mean, she was asleep and you'll say, let's go out and let's go for a run, and she would be there. So yeah, I'm very, very happy and quite emotional too. This was the toughest wine to make. I remember I cried for pretty much 2 days when I put it together, but it was also, in a sense, the best feeling ever when I put the two wines together. It's a blend of Cabernet and Syrah. And yeah, it's just to keep her legacy alive. And thanks, Dan. Thanks for sharing it.
You've inspired me to do something similar, because we have our memories of our 70-odd kilogram Stavros. You're not going to make a rosé or a Cinsault for a dog like Stavros. A Pinot Noir is not going to be the choice. And Dee, my wife, and I both love a big, strong, bold red. And we love your Cabernet Sauvignon in particular. So we're going to come down and join you. We're going to make a barrel of wine, whether it's a straight cab or something similar that's got a big set of shoulders on it, big broad chest, lots of love. And you've got the Rocky. We're looking forward to making the Stavros with you.
I'm hugely honoured to be part of this process, you know. And to me, I think the personality that he was. I mean, he owned the Dan Nicol social media pages, and he was loved by everyone. So it will be a huge honor to put something together. And I think, true to his personality, it needs to be very energetic but bold. So Cabernet with a touch of something, we'll get there, and we'll make the family part of that, because it's so important to remember them and to have them with us every single day. Because I think if you take my dogs away, I would be nothing today. Every single day I get up and you can always look at them, and they're so full of life, and they just give us this life lesson that you have to go and live today to the fullest. So I'm honored to be able to produce a wine for him.
We're so excited as a family to be doing this, and I think the other part that really brings it full circle is that your wines generally about 4 years from beginning till end until they're ready. Of the 8 years we had Stavros, I think he spent about 4 of them sleeping, because that's a bull mastiff for you. So that's an added part of a story that's just beginning. The hearts are still sore, the tears have still been flowing this morning, but this is going to be a very special way. Just as Erika remembers her Rocky, so we get to remember Stavros and drink a glass in memory of my best friend.
Cheers to them.
Oh, there we go. That is big Stavros, and that's Stavros. So we'll only be drinking in about 4 years' time, but a really cool way to remember dogs, as everybody on the show has done this evening, one way or the other. Really excited to see where this wine goes with Erika. Beyers, you made the diesel out of Beyers Cliff, celebrating your great friend. Tell me about the wine you chose, why you chose it, how that wine reflected the character and the memories of Diesel.
You know, when Diesel died, I said I for 2 weeks I was shattered. And usually when somebody dies or something dies or some animal die that I love very much, then I will go and sit down and I'll write something. So I wrote a page about Diesel, and there was a lot of swear words in also because I expressed myself the way that I wanted to. And then I went to, the first thing I went to our marketers, I had 2 those days, and I said, we are going to make a Diesel pinotage. And one guy said, yes, I don't think maybe. The other guy said, yes, I think there's an opportunity. So at this stage, I've only got one marketer. Dogs have got, I'm a soft guy in a certain sense, but my dog was everything. I decided on a pinotage because Diesel was big and bold, and I listened to you and Erika now speaking, but he also had that softness in him. His body, if you could touch him, big dogs, you don't really go into their heads. Only the owners can put his head in his head because there's like an aura around his head, and they don't like to be crowded in that space. But if you could touch his ears and you could touch all parts of him, he was soft. He was like a baby, and that's typical pinotage. Pinotage, even if you leave it selected blocks and you leave it in oak for 18 months, brand new oak, it's balance. It gives you that classic balance. That's why I chose the best of the pinotages of our farm that we pick for Diesel. And Diesel as we don't talk about Beyers Truter Diesel anymore. The guys will phone and say, can you give me some of that Diesel? And I mean, 5-6 years ago, I went to Copenhagen to do a tasting, and they usually do the tastings outside the supermarket, and everybody will taste. And a guy came to me and said, you haven't got my wine. I said, but we've got everything there. And he said, no, you haven't got Diesel, because I knew Diesel. I went to your farm. I saw him. He was like a big horse, and I'm so impressed. I only drink Diesel from now on. So Diesel is in my memory every day. He was my best friend, like we all said. But if I would come back, maybe after having, winemakers don't really drink too much. Just have a glass or what too much. Diesel was just check me out. And then what I will do is I'll dive on top of him. And we will have most properly a conversation for half an hour. We would roll around, bite each other. We will laugh. And then my wife would usually say, but you came in at 12. Where have you been for half an hour? So me and Diesel was talking to each other for half an hour. But I heard your stories, and I feel for you guys. I feel for you that your dog died. And if any time you want 25 liters or some liters of pinotage, the best that I have in the cellar, I will send it over to Erika, and I'll help you with that blend. You don't have to mention that it's anything else, but I'll send some classic balance to you for that barrel.
That's an enormously generous offer. Thank you, and I look forward to having a big glass of Stavros alongside of a glass of Diesel, and see how they compare as we share memories and compare wine. And that's the beauty of wine, really. It's the joy of sharing and of being together, and it's very similar to the joy we get out of our dogs. The pinotage, which makes up Diesel, is celebrated, as we heard, as far as Sweden, and it's a favorite of so many. So too is the Faithful Hound. In fact, Christmas a few years ago, we actually had a couple of magnums of the Faithful Hound, which didn't last very long, but were particularly good. We know the story of the Faithful Hound as a dog. Henry, tell me about the wine.
Well, I think the wine actually reflects a lot about the dog, seeing as we don't exactly know what kind the Faithful Hound, the original Faithful Hound, was. Probably a sort of a mix of all the breeds that came across Mulderbosch at that time. So I think it's the Faithful Hound, in being a 5-part Bordeaux blend, is actually a very good representation of who he was. It's Cabernet Franc, Caps of Merlot, Malbec, and Petit Verdot, and obviously depending on the vintage, little bits of everything, but usually a lot of Cab Franc and a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon. That's the heart and the soul of the blend. So in terms of a wine, it's very classic and it's quite big, but with a certain amount of elegance, and I think that speaks a lot into who Bruce was, the Faithful Hound, in being just who he was. He didn't actually mind being himself, and that I think can equate a lot into the blend, because it's a blend that comes from a very certain space. Most of the vineyards that were around his tree were used for the specific blend, so it's all about where he was. Unfortunately, we also know that he passed away in that same tree area by a cobra biting him one morning, and they just found him a few moments later and thought he was sleeping, but he unfortunately passed away that way. So very naturally in the field, in the vineyards, where he loved to wait for his master, and just producing a wine with the 4 or the 5 cultivars every single year, also just keeping on with that specific winning recipe almost, is a very good tribute to him. And from just as a buy, we have always had a little picture of a Faithful Hound on the bottle. This is the new 28 or the 2019 that we're going to release, and you can see, if you know the older vintages, he looks a little bit differently. He looks a bit more upright. He I think he's looking further into the future, and he's seeing more and more, and looking and enjoying just that time where he will be reunited with his master.
There we go. That's the story. It's quite emotional, really, isn't it? The history of the Faithful Hound. Mike Dobrovich, who made that wine in the photo there with Larry Jacobs, was it meant to be a one-off, Henry, that then just became something that spilled into every year?
No, I don't think it was meant to be a one-off. I think it was meant to be like he was, really faithful, determined, and just loving, open, just having that companion, like the Faithful Hound, like the wine, every single year to get you through thick and thin. I think there was a good reason why he came across at that specific time, and the proof is in the bottle.
It certainly is. The proof is also in the bottle of another celebratory wine, the Black Dog Malbec. We've chatted briefly about the wine, but just in a bit more detail. Paul and Nicky, I've got several of those big bottles sitting in my cellar at home. Is that Malbec of yours reflective of the dog that you remember so fondly?
Okay. As I did mention earlier, yes, we called our first Malbec grown on our own vineyard the Black Dog Malbec, and the reason is, as you can see, great color, and that's why we named it after Jake, our dog, and he's on the label, and we'll keep him on the label. As you can see there, Nicky's holding it up. And why we called our wines by different names, we firmly believe by calling your wine a name, it gives the wine a personality, as opposed to just a straight Malbec or Sauvignon Blanc or whatever. And Nicky's got a very good description on the back label here.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I wrote this back label, gosh, can you hear the dogs? They're playing in the background. I can't stand all this copy, the southern cool slopes and close to the sea. But this copy came to me easily, and it was Black Dog. Oh, God, I'm trying to get away from these dogs, and I realize I can't do that. Just like the dog, dark in color, well-muscled, intense, and full of character. And that was exactly the dog, and that's exactly the wine. I totally underestimated the emotive appeal of having a dog on a label. And it's amazing how many people actually come and visit us. purely because they think, oh, these are dog people and we'd love to meet the dogs. And if you're dog people, you must be nice people. I hope that is true. I think so. The other part of the name was also Malbec is known as the black wine. It just made sense with Jake being part of the journey that we've walked. What I didn't know at the time when I called it the Black Dog is that Winston Churchill suffered from depression. I should have known that because I was a history graduate, but I didn't. And someone came into the tasting room and said, oh, how can you call a wine Black Dog after depression? And I'm usually not very quick on the repartee, but I actually got it in one this time. And I said, you know what? Just drink a bottle of this and you'll never be depressed again. So, when someone comes in and says, do you know? I know exactly what's coming out of their mouth. So, yeah. Our dogs are still sampling the grapes. We're about to pick next week. Here's a whole platter of them. It's a big grape and it's a generous grape. Dark, generous, soft and velvety, all those things that were expressed in the dog. Yeah, that's our Black Dog story.
It's such a nice parallel between wine, between grape, and between the dog, which it honors and continues to with a new generation of the Black Dogs. We spoke there about that Rocky, Erika. How long till that comes out? How long till you can have your first celebratory glass?
I think it needs at least another year. 2021, the vintage where I made, she passed away in 2020. But I think I was too emotional at that end of that year. And 2021, I thought, the best way to help you, it's always been my comfort zone. When I struggle with anything, I go to the cellar, I go to the vineyards. So 2021 was quite elegant. We struggled to really concentrate the grapes because we had a very mild February. But the wine turned out exactly like it. It's got enough tannins to just make the presence known. But then the little bit of Syrah just adds that vibrance and that extra personality. So I would say another year in barrel, and then we'll bottle. Rocky always demanded time, and as like today, it's just so fitting that we harvesting the last Cabernet Sauvignon that will go into your blend and celebrate this amazing creature. So I think we need to just focus and sit and wait it out. But I would say another year or two before we can celebrate Dear Rocky in glass. But it's also been very healing to put together, and just you go through so many emotions in winemaking. Winemaking is really all about storytelling. And I think to tell someone's life story with a wine is just incredibly special. So I'm looking forward to releasing both this and your wine.
As am I. I see Charmaine Walters is amongst those watching at the moment. Love the idea of a wine for Stavros with lots of presents. The Dancing Hound. Stavros did have a bit of a dance from time to time. It was never the most elegant two-step, but he was certainly full of enthusiasm when he did it. That is the wine I'll be making with Erika to carry on a tradition that all four of our guests this evening have already kick-started at various times with their respective homes of wine. Very quick one, as it is that time of the year before we say goodbye, and thank you to you all. Just a quick 30-second wrap-up. Erika, harvest, is it all done? And if so, how's it looking?
I'm very chuffed for two reasons. Being able to make my wines in my own cellar, it just gives you all the tools that you always hoped for, to have that real focus in your own space and to just live out your dream. So it finally came true for me this year. Looking forward to inviting everyone to come and visit and taste. But I'm very excited about harvest. 21 was good. We always say 20 was a great one, but I'm really chuffed. It's certainly a very elegant year. We're seeing ripeness at very low sugar levels, so we won't see 15% alcohol. But to me, freshness in a wine is so important, that purity of fruit, and that we're certainly seeing in heaps and bounds. So we crushed the last Cabernet. You can see the tanks behind me. They just started fermentation. I would put my money on Cabernet and Chenin Blanc for this vintage. Cabs are really looking phenomenal. So soft tannins, but lots of that tannin. But I'm incredibly happy at this stage and really looking forward to taste the wines in a few months' time.
A very buoyant Erika Obermeyer. What's the verdict up in Elgin, Team Wallace? How are things looking for the 2022 vintage?
Well, Dan, we've only just starting with our reds now. We did Merlot this last week, and next week we're doing Malbec, and thereafter Cabernet Sauvignon. So far, so good. Things trying season in that we had rain during spring and summer, so we had to follow a really stringent disease control program, and we had rain today. We've got rain tomorrow. It's thank God we've had years of experience in the industry and also in Elgin, so we know how to ride the punches, and I think we're all excited. We finished our Sauvignon Blanc yesterday, and that took us 3 weeks to pick, and we're happy, I must say.
Good news then from Elgin and from Paul Wallace Vineyards. Over in Stellenbosch, down at Mulderbosch. Henry, how's your vintage looking? How's the harvest gone?
I would say pretty good. I was in the army, but there's an old saying that says that in the army you had to just, when you were getting your uploading, you got to hurry up and wait. That's basically the harvest. It was basically a harvest of two parts. So the first part was nice and early. The Chenins, like Erika said, look amazing. Sauvignon Blancs are beautiful, really upfront and perfumey. And we actually took in quite a lot of Merlot and Cab Franc as well during those first few weeks. But then when came time for its Cabs and Cab Franc, or the later Cab Francs and Petit Bordeaux, we had to wait. We're still waiting. I spoke to one of my growers the other day, and he says he's actually never harvested as late as this in terms of Cabs and some Merlots and some Shiraz still hanging, and usually never later than the end of March for the Polka Dry area. So times are changing, and it's I think something that will reflect in the wines. I think they will be really elegant. Like Erika also said, we're noticing lower alcohols, but beautiful ripeness levels, nice tannins, very suave wines. I think there's something for everybody in the 22 vintage. I'm looking forward to it indeed.
It's a regular theme. Everybody I've been speaking to over the last week or so, lots of positive sentiment about the vintage, and everybody's saying just how late it has been. Beyers has probably done one or two more vintages than most. Beyers, wrapping up, how's the harvest been out at Beyers Kloof, and how is 2022 for you?
Up to now, it's actually been a fairly cool vintage. So with that, usually a long ripening period. That's excellent small berries. We've all got small berries, and that shows us there's a lot of potential. The first Pinotages that we made, the Cabernet showed lots of fruit and flavor and tannins. So I think it's going to be an excellent vintage, and we're looking forward to drinking it eventually. And I'm looking forward to drinking you and Erika's wine for your two dogs. The others I've tasted, the Black Dog and the Faithful Hound, and they are excellent. I think they are going to be as excellent as this vintage is going to be.
With that sort of good tiding, Beyers, it is hard to imagine it being otherwise. It's a project, if I'm honest, it's one I would always have wanted to do. I certainly didn't want to do it quite so soon. 8 years was was far too early to say goodbye to Stavros, but together with Erika, going to have a wonderful tribute and follow in the footsteps of Beyers with Diesel, with the Mulderbosch team and their Faithful Hound, and with Paul and Nicky with their Black Dog, and Erika's very own Rocky in tribute to her dear departed canine friend. I think we've just about got through it without the tears slipping away, although there have been a couple of close calls. Guys, thank you all so much for sharing the stories of the wine, but sharing the stories of the dogs. It's been a great bit of therapy for me, for which I'm really grateful. But I think it's also been a lovely opportunity for you guys to remember some special friends of yourselves. I've had plenty of Black Dog, plenty of Faithful Hound, plenty of Diesel. There's some Rocky and some Stavros to come. And hopefully when they're all ready, we can all sit down together and raise a glass to a selection of dogs causing havoc in canine heaven and have left us with some wonderful memories. So Erika, Henry, Paul, Nicky, Beyers, thank you all so much for sharing such special memories of such special dogs.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely evening, everybody.
Cheers. And to our canine friends.
So there we go, our special edition Dogs in the Vineyards, a tribute to Stavros, who left us on Saturday, but is peaceful now after a nasty but short battle with cancer, but also memories of some other fabulous dogs as we remember them right now with wine, in the case of me and Erika, with wine to come. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for indulging us with a rather personal side to Dan Really Likes Wine this evening, but also celebrated some terrific wine. Diesel is just a magnificent pinotage. That Black Dog's as good a Malbec as we have in South Africa, and the Faithful Hound delivers as a Bordeaux blend time and time again. Thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you to everybody who's been hosting me in the Wineland through the course of the week. We've got so many stories to tell over the coming months on Dan Really Likes Wine. I'll be back home in the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar in Johannesburg on Monday with some more terrific guests. Until then, have a great evening, have a great weekend. Best of luck to the rest of our Absa Cape Epic riders as they make their way into Stellenbosch, and hopefully we'll see some of you out at Val de Vie for the grand finale on Sunday. And if you get the chance this evening, open a bottle, top up a glass, and raise it to a big god called Stavros, who I'll never forget. Goodbye.